The millionaire spent every Christmas alone until the new cleaning lady said, "Come have dinner at my place," and his life was never the same again. "Are you really spending Christmas here alone?" The question sliced through the air like a cold gust on a winter night. Lena Ortega was still holding a dish towel, standing at the entrance with her coat over one arm. Her shift was over. The other staff had already gone home, and she was ready to leave too. But something made her stop. There, in front of the massive windows of the penthouse, stood Charles Stone, the wealthiest and somehow loneliest man she'd ever met. With his back turned, dressed in a flawless suit and a glass of wine in hand, he looked more like part of the decor, motionless, silent, cold. Charles slowly swirled the wine, watching the reflection of New York's lights in the red liquid. "Apparently, yes," he replied without turning around. "Is that a problem, Miss Ortega?" Lena raised her eyebrows, steady and confident. "Not for me, but it kind of seems like a problem for you." He finally turned, his sharp gaze clashing with her light tone. "I don't need company to toast the holiday," he said bluntly. "I have everything I need." "Do you really?" Lena looked around. "Because honestly, the silence feels like it's swallowing you whole." Charles frowned, caught off guard by her boldness. No one talked to him like that, not staff, not business partners. No one. Lena took a breath, adjusted her purse, and said simply, "I'm heading to dinner with my family. It's not far. If you want to come, there's still time." The silence that followed felt almost uncomfortable. Charles raised an eyebrow, not believing what he'd heard. "You're inviting me to dinner?" "That's right." She shrugged, casual. "Christmas is for being with people, not crystal glasses." Her response caught Charles completely off guard. No one had ever offered him something without expecting something in return, no interest, no flattery, just a human invitation. Still, he clung to his usual sarcasm. "Do you invite all your bosses to Christmas dinner?" "Only the ones who seem too sad to realize they deserve company." Her smile was warm, not smug. "So, coming or not?" He took a deep breath, trying to keep his composure. "Miss Ortega, I appreciate your kind gesture, but it's not really appropriate. And eating alone in a place the size of a stadium is?" She replied, laughing softly. "Come on, Mr. Stone. There's nothing wrong with being human every now and then." Her boldness threw him off balance. Charles looked at the wine, then at the city lights outside the window. The city was alive, lights, honking horns, people hugging each other. And he, a man who could buy anything, had no one to wish Merry Christmas. "Dinner's at 10, and there's delicious codfish," Lena said, grabbing her car keys. "If you change your mind, it's the yellow house on the corner of Maple Street. Can't miss it. There's a crooked wreath on the door." She waved gently and stepped into the elevator, leaving her words to echo in the room. Charles stood there, frozen, as the doors closed. 10 minutes passed. 15. The silence mocked him. He sat in the armchair, took another sip of wine, and tried to convince himself he didn't need anyone. But Lena's smiling face, those sparkling eyes, kept coming back to him. Christmas is for being with people. Damn. At exactly 9:30, he set the glass down, grabbed his coat, and headed to the garage. "This is insane," he muttered, starting the luxury car. Completely insane. The streets were lightly covered in snow. The GPS pointed to a simple neighborhood in Brooklyn. Each mile took him farther from his world of luxury and closer to something he couldn't quite name. When he parked, he sat there for a moment, staring at the modest home white curtains, a paper tree in the window, the sound of children laughing inside. He hesitated. A man like him didn't belong here. But curiosity beat pride. He knocked on the door. Inside, he heard quick footsteps and a burst of laughter. The door opened to reveal Lena wearing a floral apron, hair down, with a sparkle in her eyes that completely disarmed him. "Mr. Stone," she said, surprised but smiling wide. "I knew you wouldn't resist my cod." Charles blinked, a bit embarrassed by the warm welcome. "I thought I'd take you up on the offer," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "If there's still cod, like you said." "There's plenty," she said, delighted. "Come in before it gets cold. It's a mess in here, but it's a good kind of mess." She stepped aside, and the warmth of the room wrapped around him like a hug. The smell of spices, laughter, and music filled the air. The living room was small, simple, full of life. Children were laughing on the couch, and an older woman was singing off-key in the kitchen. Nothing looked fancy, but everything felt alive. "This is different," he murmured. "Around here, we call this home," Lena said as she handed him a plate. "Sit down before the food's all gone." He obeyed, a little awkwardly. Every laugh, every spontaneous gesture hit him in an unfamiliar way. There were no formalities, no status, just people. "So," she asked, serving herself, "still, think spending Christmas alone is better?" Charles looked up and, for the first time in a long while, he smiled a real smile. "Maybe I was wrong." Dinner went on with funny stories, childhood memories from Lena, and little kitchen mishaps that made her laugh at herself. Without realizing it, Charles started to relax. At midnight, when Lena raised her glass of juice and said, "Merry Christmas," he did the same. "Merry Christmas, Lena." And for the first time in years, those words didn't feel empty. Outside, snow covered the street. Inside, the millionaire who lived, surrounded by luxury, was discovering something far more rare, the warmth of being with people who didn't want anything from him except his company. The next morning, Charles woke up blinking a few times, confused, trying to remember where he was. The ceiling wasn't his. The couch was too small, and there was a smell of coffee that definitely didn't come from his top-of-the-line Italian machine. Ah, right. Lena's house. He sat up slowly, rubbing his neck. That couch felt about as soft as a park bench, but strangely, he'd slept better than he had in weeks. Maybe it was the exhaustion, or maybe it was the fact that, for the first time in a long while, he hadn't woken up alone in an empty apartment. "Good morning, Mr. Executive." Lena's cheerful voice called out from the kitchen, followed by a laugh. "Did you survive the night on the common folks' couch?" Charles couldn't help but smile. He ran a hand through his messy hair and stood up, straightening his wrinkled shirt. "I survived, but I think my back might sue you." Lena appeared in the kitchen doorway holding a cup of coffee, wearing an apron covered in cartoon cats. "Oh, come on. You slept like a baby. I heard you snoring." "I do not snore," he said, offended. "You absolutely do." Loudly, she grinned playfully. "But don't worry. It was like aristocratic snoring. Very proper." Charles rolled his eyes but couldn't hold back a laugh. "Aristocratic snoring? That's a new one. Want coffee? Or would you prefer some organic green tea with a hint of Swiss cloud essence?" She teased, heading back to the kitchen. "Coffee's perfect," he said, following her. The kitchen was tiny, but it smelled amazing. Lena was pulling a cake from the oven, and the scent of cinnamon and brown sugar filled the room. Charles sat at the small wooden table, watching her move with quick, practiced motions. "You baked a cake this early in the morning?" he asked, impressed. "Of course. Christmas doesn't end at midnight, Mr. Stone. Around here, we keep the party going." She cut a generous slice and placed it on his plate. "Try it and be honest. I can take constructive feedback." He took a bite. The flavor was simple, homemade, but there was something comforting about it. It wasn't fancy like the desserts he usually ate at upscale restaurants, but it was good in a way he couldn't quite describe. "It's good," he said, and watched her face light up. "Just good?" Lena crossed her arms, pretending to be offended. "That cake took love, sweat, and 3 eggs that were almost expired. It deserves at least an excellent for the effort." Charles laughed for real. "All right, it's excellent. Much better." She poured coffee for both of them and sat across from him. "So, how was your first night outside the castle?" "Different," he admitted, taking a sip. "But good. Strangely good." Lena rested her chin on her hand, studying him. "You're not used to this, are you? Stepping out of your comfort zone?" "Not really," Charles confessed, staring into his cup. "My life is pretty predictable. Predictable and lonely. From what I saw last night." Her honesty caught him off guard. Charles wasn't used to people speaking so directly. Most people either didn't notice or didn't care. "And yours?" he asked. "Always this lively and full of energy?" Lena shrugged, but her smile faded just a little. "I try, but some days are tough. You know, I work a lot, don't earn much, and sometimes I feel like I'm running on a treadmill that goes nowhere. Do you have any dreams? Something you want to do besides cleaning up after grumpy millionaires?" She laughed. "Grumpy is actually a kind nickname, but yes, I do." Lena hesitated, like she was deciding whether or not to share. I've always wanted to open a cafe, something simple and cozy where people can sit, talk, and enjoy a slice of homemade cake. Nothing fancy, just real. Charles looked at her with genuine interest. So why haven't you? Because money doesn't grow on trees, Mr. Stone. She chuckled, but there was sadness in her eyes. I save what I can, but there's always some bill, some unexpected expense. It's like trying to dry ice. He stayed quiet for a moment, thinking it through. And what are you most afraid of about all this? Failing, she answered right away. Trying and not making it. Then everyone will say, I told you so, and I'll have to agree. Charles understood that more than he wanted to admit. And you? Lena asked, turning the question back to him. What are you afraid of? He took a deep breath. No one had ever asked him that. The emptiness, he finally said, realizing, I built an empire, but nothing that truly matters. Lena stayed quiet, taking it in. Then she reached out and gently touched his hand, a simple gesture, but comforting. I think you matter more than you realize. The moment was broken by Charles's phone ringing. He looked at the screen and sighed. 17 missed calls. I have to go, he said, getting up. Of course, the business world doesn't wait. Lena got up too and walked him to the door. Charles paused at the doorway, turning to her. Thank you for yesterday. For today, for everything. You're welcome. She smiled warmly. And hey, if you ever want to do this again, the door's always open, even if my couch is awful. He laughed. I'll think about your project, the cafe. Maybe I can help. Lena's eyes widened. Really? Really. But no pressure. Just think about it. She waved as he walked to the car. Charles got in, started the engine, and glanced in the rearview mirror. Lena was still standing at the door, waving with that smile that seemed to brighten the whole day. He smiled back and drove off. The ride back to Manhattan was quick, but every mile seemed to add more weight to his shoulders. When he reached the penthouse, reality hit him like a punch. His business partner, Gregory Hamilton, was sitting in the living room with a tense expression and a folder of documents in hand. Where were you? Gregory asked bluntly. Out, Charles replied, taking off his coat. We have a crisis. The merger with Archite is hanging by a thread. They're rethinking everything. Charles closed his eyes, feeling the pressure return. What happened? Information leak. Someone on the inside sabotaged the negotiations. The contrast was jarring. Just hours ago, he was laughing, eating homemade cake, feeling human. Now, he was back in the cold, calculated, ruthless world of business. But something had shifted. For the first time, he wondered if it was all really worth it. We'll fix it, Charles said, but his voice sounded different, less certain, more tired. Gregory looked at him, suspicious. Are you okay? I'm fine, Charles lied, staring out the window. Down below, the city was buzzing. And somewhere in Brooklyn, there was a woman in a cat-print apron who had made him laugh for real. And somehow that felt more important than any business merger. The next 3 days were a quiet kind of torture. Charles Stone sat behind the mahogany desk in his office, surrounded by financial reports, performance charts, and projections that might as well have been written in another language. Not that he didn't understand, he did, perfectly. The problem was his mind kept drifting elsewhere, to a tiny kitchen, to a cinnamon cake, to a warm smile and a laugh that was downright contagious. Mr. Stone, his assistant, Helen, snapped him back to reality. You need to sign these contracts before 3. Of course, Helen. Thank you. He picked up the pen, but his eyes wandered to the window. Maybe it was crazy. Maybe it was impulsive. But he needed to see Lena again. He picked up his phone and typed a quick message. Deleted it. Typed it again. Sighed. Finally hit send. Would you have lunch with me tomorrow? As a professional, thank you for Christmas. You picked the place. The reply came in less than 2 minutes. Professional, thank you. Fancy. I accept, but nothing too expensive, okay? I don't want you thinking I'm taking advantage. Charles smiled to himself. The next morning, he chose a restaurant downtown, nothing too flashy, but not plain either. Something in between. Enough to impress without overwhelming. Lena arrived right at noon, wearing a simple white blouse and jeans. Her hair was tied back in a ponytail, and she carried a colorful fabric bag that looked handmade. She didn't fit in at all among the suit-wearing executives and hushed conversations. And strangely enough, that was exactly what made her perfect. "Mr. Stone," she waved enthusiastically, catching the attention of half the room. He stood up, trying not to laugh at the way everyone turned to look. "Lena, I'm glad you came." "Of course I came. You're paying, right?" She winked as she sat down. "Just kidding. Sort of." The waiter brought the menu, and Lena opened it like she was reading an instruction manual in Russian. "Oh, wow. What is saffron risotto with port wine reduction? That sounds like a magic potion." Charles laughed. "It's rice with saffron seasoning and a wine sauce." "Oh, so it's fancy rice. Got it." She closed the menu. "I'll stick with pasta. Simple. Honest. No tricks." The waiter wrote down the order and brought them each a glass of red wine. Lena grabbed hers with both hands like it was a coffee mug and took a big sip. Tasty. But honestly, I'd rather have orange juice. Charles almost choked on his wine. "Did you just say you prefer orange juice over a French wine from 1998? "I do. Juice doesn't make me dizzy. And it's cheaper." She shrugged, totally relaxed. "And honestly, this whole expensive wine thing is overrated. At the end of the day, it's just fermented grapes." "Don't say that too loud. Some people here would pay $1,000 for that fermented grape juice." $1,000? Lena's eyes went wide. "That would cover 3 months of my rent. Who has money to waste like that? People like me, apparently." She paused, realizing what she'd just said. "Oh, no. Sorry. I forgot that you're... well, you. Don't worry. I'm used to it." Charles took another sip, still smiling. Lena leaned in, lowering her voice like she was sharing a secret. "But seriously, doesn't it bother you knowing there are people going hungry while others spend a fortune on wine that's not even that great? You really don't hold back, do you?" "Not really. My grandma always said, 'Lena, if you've got something to say it, but say it politely.'" She smiled. "I try to be polite, but it doesn't always work." The waiter brought their food. Lena grabbed her fork and started eating with enthusiasm, letting out a satisfied hum. "This is good. Expensive, but good." Charles watched her, fascinated. There was something refreshing about the way she just existed, no filters, no masks. "So," he began, "do you really think all millionaires are arrogant?" "Not all, but most." She waved her fork in the air. "Some folks forget that normal people exist. They act like the world revolves around them. Talk to waiters like they're invisible. Treat workers like furniture. It's annoying. I get that. Take you, for example." She pointed the fork at him casually. "At first, you were totally like that, all stiff and serious with your 'don't bother me' face. But then you came over for dinner and realized you're human. Big improvement." Charles coughed slightly. "Did you just call me arrogant?" "Technically, I said you were past tense. You're doing better now." She smiled, biting into a piece of bread. "Don't worry, it's a compliment in disguise." He shook his head, laughing. "You're unbelievable. And you're laughing. See? I'm good for you." Just then, a woman's voice cut through the light mood like a knife. "Charles Stone." What a surprise. He froze. He knew that voice, and it wasn't a pleasant memory. Vanessa Cole stood next to the table, all elegance and veiled poison. Perfect blonde hair, tailored dress, and a smile that promised trouble. "Vanessa," Charles said, keeping his tone steady. "What are you doing here? Having lunch?" "Same as you, apparently." She glanced at Lena with calculated disinterest. "And who is your companion?" Lena looked at Vanessa, then at Charles, picking up on the tension. "Lena Ortega. Nice to meet you." She reached out her hand. Vanessa shook it lightly, like she was touching something unpleasant. How charming. Charles always did have a special eye for interesting projects. "Projects?" Lena raised an eyebrow. "Vanessa, that's enough," Charles said quietly but firmly. "Oh, come on. No need to pretend." Vanessa crossed her arms with a cruel smile. "You've always been drawn to lost causes. That girl from college you rescued from bankruptcy, the failed designer you supported for months, and now, well, this one." Lena felt her face get warm. "Sorry, what exactly are you trying to say?" "She's implying you're just a hobby for me," Charles said, locking eyes with Vanessa. And she's wrong. Am I? Vanessa tilted her head, faking innocence. Then tell me, Charles, does she know how much you make a year? That you could probably buy the building she lives in? That's enough. Charles stood up, but Lena was quicker. She grabbed her purse, took out her wallet, and tossed a few bills on the table. The bills paid. She looked at Vanessa with disdain. And just for the record, I'm not anyone's lost cause. I have dignity, something you clearly don't understand. She turned to Charles, her eyes shining with held-back anger. Thanks for lunch, Mr. Stone. It was enlightening. Lena, wait, he tried to grab her arm, but she pulled away. No, you should have warned me. This professional thank you came with an audience. She waved sarcastically at Vanessa. Bye, interesting project. It's been a pleasure. And she walked out of the restaurant, leaving Charles standing there helpless, while Vanessa smiled in satisfaction. So dramatic. Charles, you never learn. He looked at her, his voice cold. Get out of my way. Vanessa shrugged and left, leaving behind a trail of expensive perfume and resentment. Charles sat back down, staring at the half-eaten plate Lena had left. Her words still echoed in his head. I have dignity. He ran a hand over his face, frustrated. Maybe Gregory was right. Maybe he really was terrible with people. But one thing was certain, he had to fix this somehow. 4 days. 4 long days since the disaster at the restaurant. Charles had sent 3 messages, no reply. Called twice straight to voicemail. He even thought about showing up at her place, but something held him back. Pride, maybe, or fear of making things worse. He spent his evenings on the penthouse couch, staring at his phone like he could will it to ring. Gregory was right. He was terrible with people. But this time, he really wanted to make it right. Lena, on her end, acted like everything was fine. She worked, smiled at the neighbors, baked cakes like nothing had happened. But at night, when the silence came, she found herself thinking about Charles's genuine laugh, the awkward way he held his coffee cup, the way he looked at her like she was actually interesting. No, she told herself. He's just another bored rich guy. Vanessa was right. Then why did it hurt so much? On the morning of the 5th day, the New York sky was heavy, filled with dark clouds threatening rain. Lena was at home going through her grandmother's old recipes when the doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting anyone. She opened the door and froze. Charles stood on the sidewalk holding a bouquet that looked like it had been bought in a rush. White daisies, a little crushed, mixed with roses already wilting at the edges. He wasn't wearing his perfect suit, just a simple jacket, jeans, and an expression Lena had never seen before. Pure vulnerability. Hi, he said, his voice hesitant. Lena crossed her arms and leaned on the doorframe. Hi. I brought flowers. He held them out. I see that. They look better at the flower shop. He glanced down at the bouquet, as if only now realizing how rough they looked. I think they got squished on the way. Lena didn't say anything. She just watched him. He was nervous. That was new. Can I come in? Charles asked, hopeful. No. He blinked, surprised. No? You embarrassed me in front of that awful woman. Lena lifted her chin, stubborn. And now you show up with wilted flowers, thinking that fixes everything. I know I messed up. That's why I'm here to say I'm sorry. Then say it. She didn't move. Charles took a deep breath. Lena, I'm sorry. Vanessa is complicated. I didn't expect her to show up, let alone say those things. But she did. And you let her. I tried to stop her, he defended himself. But you left before I could explain. Explain what? That she's right? That I'm just another project to you? Lena's voice trembled slightly. But she stood firm. No, you're not that. You never were. Charles stepped closer. Vanessa was being cruel because she's still bitter about our breakup. She wants me miserable, and I got caught in the middle without even knowing. Yes, and I'm sorry for that. Truly. He held out the flowers. Please take them. Lena looked at the bouquet, then back at him. Slowly, she took the flowers but didn't open the door. Hold on. Hold on. Charles frowned. Out here. She shut the door. Charles stood on the sidewalk, confused, holding nothing but air. Seconds later, it started to rain light at first, then heavier by the minute. Inside, Lena placed the flowers in a vase, trying not to smile. She grabbed a glass of water, took a slow sip, and looked out the window. Charles was still there, soaked. She sighed. Stubborn. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Then 15. When she finally opened the door again, Charles was completely soaked. His hair was stuck to his forehead, and his jacket was dripping with water. But he hadn't moved an inch. "You're out of your mind," Lena said, shocked. "Probably," he replied, wiping water from his face with one hand. "But I'm not leaving until you forgive me. You're going to catch pneumonia. Then forgive me quickly." He smiled, even though he was shivering from the cold. Lena rolled her eyes but couldn't hold back a laugh. "Come in already before you turn into a human popsicle." Charles stepped inside, leaving a trail of water all over the floor. Lena grabbed a towel and tossed it at his face. "Dry off. You look like a wet dog." "Thanks for the kind comparison," he said, rubbing the towel through his hair. It was a compliment. "I like dogs." She crossed her arms again. "Now talk. Why did you really come here?" Charles stopped, the towel resting on his shoulders, and looked at her seriously. "Because I missed you." Lena blinked, caught off guard. "What?" "I missed you, Lena." He took a step closer. "These past few days everything has felt empty, dull, and I realized it's not just your company I miss. It's you. The way you laugh, the way you say exactly what's on your mind, the way you make me feel human." She stood there silently, letting the words sink in. "I never knew what it felt like to miss someone. Not until now." His voice was low, honest. "And I don't want you to think you're just some project or anything like that. You're important." Lena felt something soften inside her. The anger, the pride, it all started to fade. "Vanessa was wrong," Charles went on, "and I should have made that clear. But she's always been good at finding my weak spots. And you became one of them." "A weak spot?" Lena raised an eyebrow. "In the best way," he said with a nervous laugh. "I'm making a mess of this, aren't I?" "You are. But it's sweet." She smiled, finally relaxing. "All right. I forgive you, but only because you stood in the rain like a romantic fool." Charles exhaled, relieved. "Thank you. But if you embarrass me again, I swear I'll hit you with a rolling pin." He laughed. "Noted." Lena held out her hand. "Friends again?" Charles took her hand but didn't let go. "Friends." They stayed like that for a moment, quiet, just feeling the closeness. The rain tapped gently on the roof. The smell of coffee still lingered in the air. And for the first time in days, everything felt right. Until Charles's phone rang. He looked at the screen and frowned. "Sorry, I need to take this. It's from the office." "Go ahead." Lena let go of his hand. Charles stepped away to answer. "Hello, Gregory." "What is it?" His partner's voice on the other end was tense. "You need to come back to New York right now. Your father just arrived." Charles's stomach dropped. "What? When?" "This morning. He's at the office, and he's not happy." "Why?" "He wasn't supposed to be back until March. Looks like he changed his mind, and now he's talking about taking the company back." "Charles, you need to get here fast." He closed his eyes, feeling the weight fall back onto his shoulders. "I'm on my way." He ended the call and stood still for a few seconds, trying to take it all in. "Everything okay?" Lena asked, noticing his expression shift. "My father's back." His voice was tired, and that complicates everything. "Why?" Charles hesitated. How could he explain that his father would never approve of him being involved with an employee? That the man who built the company had done it by staying emotionally distant and in full control? "He's complicated, and he doesn't like it when I mix personal life with work." Lena frowned. "But we're just friends again. There's nothing wrong with that." "I know. But to him, anything outside the rules is a problem." Charles sighed, frustrated. "I have to go. I need to deal with this before it turns into a bigger mess." "All right, go." Lena forced a smile. "We'll talk later." He nodded and walked out, still soaked, carrying the weight of a storm much bigger than the one outside. Lena closed the door slowly and leaned against it. For the first time, she felt that something was about to change, and she didn't know if it would be for better or worse. The office was far too quiet when Charles arrived. Normally there would be activity, conversations, phones ringing, but now it was as if everyone knew something big was happening and chose to disappear. He walked down the glass hallway to the main office where Gregory stood waiting with a look that mixed sympathy and concern. "He's in your office," Gregory said softly, "and he's not in a good mood." "When is he ever?" Charles muttered, straightening the suit that was still damp from the rain. He took a deep breath and opened the door. William Stone was sitting in the leather armchair that until that morning had belonged to Charles. The man was nearly 70, with neatly combed gray hair, gold-rimmed glasses, and a posture that radiated authority. He didn't need to raise his voice to take control of a room. His presence alone was enough. "Father," Charles greeted him, closing the door behind him. "I didn't expect you back so soon." William looked up from the papers he was reading, scanning his son from head to toe. "Apparently, I should have come back earlier. It looks like things have gotten relaxed around here. The company's doing well. Last quarter's numbers prove it." "Numbers matter, Charles, but discipline and focus are essential." He took off his glasses and cleaned them with a silk cloth. "And I've heard you've been distracted." Charles frowned. "Who told you that?" "It doesn't matter. What matters is that there are rumors about you getting inappropriately involved with an employee." Charles's stomach tightened. "I don't know where you heard that. Vanessa called me." Of course it was her. Charles closed his eyes for a moment, trying to stay calm. "Vanessa hasn't been part of my life for over a year. She still cares about you and about me as well." William stood up and walked around the desk. "She said you've been seeing a housekeeper. Is that true?" "Lena is not just a housekeeper. She's an incredible person, hardworking, smart, funny, irrelevant." William's voice cut through like a blade. "You are the heir to this company. Every move you make is being watched. Every decision you take reflects on our reputation. And being involved with someone from that social class is unacceptable." "Social class?" Charles felt his blood boil. "Are you serious?" "Completely." William folded his arms. "Do you think I built this empire by being sentimental?" "I made tough choices, Charles. Choices that required personal sacrifice, and I expect the same from you. You want me to stop seeing Lena?" "Exactly. And I want you to cut any professional ties she has with our family immediately." Charles shook his head in disbelief. "That's ridiculous. She's done nothing wrong. This isn't about right or wrong. It's about maintaining the standards this company stands for." William put his glasses back on. "You'll end it today, or I'll take back full control of the company and you'll go back to being just another executive without decision-making power." It hit hard. Charles knew his father wasn't bluffing. William Stone was known for following through on his threats. "You can't do that." Charles tried to argue, but even to himself his voice sounded weak. "I can. And I will, if I have to." William sat back down as if the matter was closed. "It's your choice, Charles. The empire we built, or a passing distraction." Charles stood there, his fists clenched. Old memories rushed back. His father was never present during his childhood, never attended school plays, never celebrated birthdays, never offered a hug. Everything had always been about business, profit, reputation. And now he wanted Charles to become the same. "I need time," Charles said, trying to keep his voice steady. "You have until tomorrow." William turned back to his papers, ending the conversation. Charles walked out, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. Gregory was waiting outside. "Well?" the partner asked. "He wants me to cut all ties with Lena, or he takes over." Gregory sighed. "Charles, maybe it's better." "Don't say it." Charles raised a hand to stop him. "I already know what you're going to say. That it's better to move on, that she's just a girl, but she's not. She's different. I know, but your father won't budge. You know that." Charles rubbed his face, exhausted. "I know." That afternoon, Lena was working at Charles's penthouse, cleaning as usual, but something felt off. The air seemed heavy, tense. Helen, the secretary, entered the room with a strange expression. "Lena, I need to talk to you." "Of course. What is it?" Lena put down the cleaning cloth. "Mr. Stone, Charles's father. He asked to review all employee contracts." Helen hesitated. "He's considering making some cuts." Lena felt a tightness in her chest. "Cuts? You mean layoffs?" "Possibly. He didn't give details, but he specifically asked for your contract." Lena's world seemed to shift. She wasn't naive. She knew exactly what this meant. Charles's father had found out about them, and now she was going to be the sacrifice. "I understand," Lena said, forcing a smile. "Thank you for letting me know, Helen." The secretary left, leaving Lena alone. She looked around the luxurious penthouse. That place had never truly been hers. And maybe Charles hadn't been either. She picked up her phone and started typing a message to him. "I think we should take a break. Your family doesn't want me around, and I don't want to be the cause of trouble for you." She sent the message before she could change her mind. Then she grabbed her things, finished straightening up the room, and left. That evening, Charles finally managed to leave the office. He was exhausted physically and emotionally. When he saw Lena's message, it felt like the ground had vanished beneath him. He called her right away. She didn't answer. He tried again. Still nothing. Finally, he drove to her house, knocked on the door. No answer. He peeked through the window and saw movement inside. "Lena, I know you're in there. Please open the door." Silence. "I just want to talk to explain." The door opened, but Lena didn't look welcoming. Her eyes were red, but her expression was firm. "There's nothing to explain, Charles. I get it. Your father doesn't want me near you. And honestly, I can't blame him." "What?" "Lena, that's not true." "Yes, it is. I'm just a housekeeper." She crossed her arms, guarding herself. "He's right. We come from different worlds. I was naive to think this could work." "Don't say that." Charles tried to take her hand, but Lena stepped back. "I'm handing in my resignation tomorrow. It's for the best for you, for your company, for everyone." "No, you're not doing that." His voice came out desperate. "I've already decided, Charles." She forced a sad smile. "Thank you for everything. Really. You made me feel special, even if it was just for a little while." "Lena." "Good night, Mr. Stone." She closed the door slowly but firmly. And this time, she didn't open it again. Charles stood there on the sidewalk, helpless. Every part of him wanted to break down that door, pull her close, promise he'd fix everything. But he didn't move. Because deep down, he didn't know how to fix it. He didn't know how to choose between the empire he had spent a lifetime building and the woman who had changed everything in just a few weeks. The next day, Lena packed her things at the penthouse one last time. She folded the cleaning cloths, put away the supplies, and left everything in order. Charles was in his office when Helen brought in the resignation letter. "She left this," the secretary said gently. Charles took the envelope but couldn't open it. He just stared out the window, watching the city below. Lena was somewhere in that sea of buildings, and he couldn't be by her side. On the other side of town, Lena got into her old car, placed her bags on the back seat, and took a deep breath. She didn't look back. She couldn't, because if she did, she might fall apart. And Lena Ortega didn't fall apart. Never. But as she drove through the streets of New York, one stubborn tear rolled down her cheek. Just one. And that was enough to break the heart she swore was guarded. A week went by, 7 days that felt like 7 months. Charles Stone went back to his usual routine, waking up early, working late, eating dinner alone, while staring out over the city through the giant windows. The penthouse was spotless, but strangely lifeless. The new housekeeper Helen had hired was efficient, quiet, and completely invisible, the exact opposite of Lena. There was no scent of cinnamon cake in the air, no laughter echoing down the hall, no one calling him Mr. Executive in that teasing tone that made him smile. Gregory tried to lift his spirits with meetings and business strategies, but Charles just nodded, distracted. Even his father noticed the change, though he never said anything. William Stone simply watched his son with that calculating look, as if timing how long it would take for Charles to get over it. But Charles wasn't getting over anything. He was just existing. The next Saturday, he decided to get out. He couldn't take those walls anymore. He got in the car and drove without a destination, letting the city lead the way. He ended up in a neighborhood in Queens where a street fair was happening, colorful booths, the smell of food, live music, kids running around. It was the kind of place he'd normally avoid. But something made him stop. He parked and wandered through the fair, watching the people, families laughing, couples holding hands, vendors shouting their specials. There was a comforting simplicity to it all. And then he saw her. Lena was behind a small booth selling homemade sweets, wearing a red apron and a cap that read "Life is Sweet." She was arranging rows of brigadeiros, chatting cheerfully with a customer. Charles's heart raced. For a moment, he thought about turning around and leaving. But his feet wouldn't listen. In fact, they carried him straight to the booth. Lena looked up and froze. For a split second, something flickered across her face, maybe surprise, maybe joy, maybe hurt. But she quickly pulled herself together and kept arranging the sweets, pretending not to see him. "Excuse me," Charles said, stepping up to the booth. "How much are the brigadeiros?" Lena kept moving the little boxes around without looking at him. $2 each, but we're almost closing. Then I'll take them all." She finally looked up at him, surprised. "All of them?" He pointed at the rows of sweets. "What's here? 50? 60? Are you out of your mind? No one buys 60 brigadeiros at once." "I do." Charles pulled out his wallet. "No." She shook her head. "Put your money away. I don't need charity." "It's not charity. I like brigadeiros." He gave a slight smile. "And yours look amazing. You didn't even know what a brigadeiro was 3 weeks ago." "True, but now I do, and I want to buy them all." Lena huffed, annoyed. "You're impossible. You've said that before." He tilted his head, amused. "So, are you selling or not?" "Why are you here, Charles?" Her voice sounded tired. "Weren't we supposed to stay away from each other? Isn't that what your father wanted?" "It was," he sighed. "But I don't care what he wants anymore." "You should care. He's your father, and it's your company." "Maybe. But I'm tired of living a life that doesn't make me happy." Charles leaned on the stand, watching her. "I miss you, Lena. The house feels cold without you, and it's not just the cleaning." She looked away, trying to hide her emotions. "Don't do this." "Do what? Tell the truth?" "Confuse me." She finally met his eyes. "I made a decision. It was hard, but I made it. And now you show up saying all these things and messing everything up again. I'm sorry, but I had to see you." Lena stayed quiet for a moment, biting her lip. Then, she picked up a small box of brigadeiros and handed it to him. "Here, free. Now go. Only if you come with me." "What?" She raised an eyebrow. "There's a New Year's charity event in 2 weeks. Nothing too fancy. I promise, just dinner, music, a few boring people I'll have to put up with." He smiled. "And I'd really like you to come with me." Lena laughed, not believing it. "You're inviting me to a rich people event after everything that's happened?" "I am. And before you say no, just know I won't give up easily. I can stand here all afternoon buying brigadeiros until you say yes." "You're ridiculous." But she was smiling. "Ridiculous, but persistent. And one more thing, my father will be there, and I want him to see that you're important to me. Not as an employee, as someone who matters." Lena felt her heart race. "Charles, I know it's complicated. I know we come from different worlds, but I don't care about that anymore." He took a step closer. "I just want to spend New Year's with you and show my father, Vanessa, everyone that you're not some distraction. You're you." She stood there processing everything. Part of her wanted to shout yes right away, but the rational part was still scared. "I don't have anything to wear to something like that," she said finally. "You can wear whatever you want. I don't care. And your ex, is she going to be there?" "Probably. But I'll be with you." He smiled. "And if she tries anything, I give you full permission to throw orange juice on her." Lena laughed, finally relaxing. "Tempting. So, will you go?" Charles held out his hand. "Please." She looked at his hand, then at his eyes. "All right. I'll go." "Really?" He looked genuinely surprised. "Really. But on one condition." She pointed a finger at him. "No fancy dress bought by you. No jewelry. No limo. I go my way, or I don't go at all." Charles laughed, relieved. "Deal. You your way. And one more thing." She crossed her arms, serious. "If your father says something rude, I'm not going to stay quiet. I'll answer him politely, but I will. I wouldn't expect anything less." He held out his hand again. "Do we have a deal?" Lena shook his hand, feeling the firmness of his grip. "Deal. Great. Then I'll come pick you up at 7. I can go by myself." "I know you can, but I want to pick you up." He smiled. "Let me be a gentleman just this once." She rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. "All right, Mr. Executive. You win this round." Charles felt a wave of relief so strong it nearly knocked him over. He had Lena back even if it was just for one night. He had her back. "Can I take the brigadeiros now?" he asked, pointing to the stand. "Take 10. I'll sell the rest." She started boxing them up. "And you better pay properly, no giving me $100 bill and telling me to keep the change." "I wouldn't do that." "Yes, you would." She looked at him with that familiar spark. "I know you, Charles Stone." He laughed, taking the boxes. "I think you do." As he walked back to his car, Charles felt something he hadn't felt in days. Hope. Maybe it wouldn't be easy. Maybe there were still obstacles ahead. But for the first time, he was ready to fight. Lena watched him walk away, still feeling the warmth of his hand in hers. She knew she was taking a risk again, that she might get hurt. But there was something about Charles Stone that made her want to try. And maybe, just maybe, this New Year's could be the start of something new, something real. She smiled to herself and went back to arranging the sweets. And for the first time in a week, she felt like the future could be sweet, just as sweet as the brigadeiros she made with her own hands. New Year's Eve arrived with a clear, starry sky over Manhattan. The charity event was held in one of the most elegant halls downtown, with crystal chandeliers, tables decorated with white flowers, and an orchestra playing softly in the background. Charles Stone adjusted his tie for the 5th time, looking nervous. Gregory watched him, amused. "You're more anxious than when we closed that $2 million deal," his partner said, sipping champagne. "That was business. This is different." Charles glanced toward the entrance again. "She'll come. Relax." And then she did. Lena stepped into the ballroom as if she were walking into her own home. She wore a simple emerald green dress she had sewn herself, low-heeled shoes she bought on sale, and her hair loose, falling naturally over her shoulders. No fancy jewelry, no heavy makeup, just her. And she was absolutely stunning. Conversations around the room quieted for a moment, not because her dress was the fanciest or the flashiest, but because there was something in the way she walked, confident, natural, genuine, that drew everyone's attention. Charles couldn't take his eyes off her. He walked toward her, heart racing. "You came," he said, smiling. "Of course I did. I promised, didn't I?" Lena looked around, impressed. "Wow, this place is bright. Literally. There's crystal on the ceiling. It's a little over the top. I know. A little." She took a glass of champagne from a passing tray. "This looks like a fairy tale palace. But that's fine. I can pretend I'm a princess for a night." Charles laughed. "You don't have to pretend. You're perfect, just the way you are. Liar. I sewed this dress in 3 days. The hem's crooked." She pointed discreetly at the bottom edge. "I didn't notice." "That's because you're not looking at the hem. You're looking at me." She winked playfully. "But thanks for the compliment." They walked through the ballroom, and Charles introduced Lena to a few people. She greeted everyone politely without trying to impress. She didn't pretend to be someone she wasn't, and strangely, that impressed people more than any fancy act ever could. Then a woman in a gold dress with way too much jewelry walked over. It was Jessica Blackwell, a well-known socialite famous for her sharp tongue and lack of filter. "Charles, darling," she exclaimed, kissing the air next to his face. "So good to see you. And who's your companion?" "Jessica. This is Lena Ortega." "Lena. Jessica Blackwell." Jessica looked Lena up and down with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Ortega. How interesting. Are you Latina?" "I'm American," Lena said with a calm tone. "But my grandparents were from Mexico." "Oh, how charming." Jessica took a sip of champagne. "And what do you do, dear? Something in fashion?" "Not exactly. I bake cakes and I clean houses." Lena smiled, completely unbothered. "And you? What do you do besides wear heavy jewelry?" Charles choked a little on his drink. Gregory nearby tried to hide a laugh. Jessica blinked, clearly thrown off. I run charitable foundations." "That's nice. Must feel good to help people." Lena tilted her head. "Or do you just sign checks and go to parties?" A hush fell around them. Some people tried not to laugh. Others just looked stunned. Jessica opened her mouth, then closed it, unsure what to say. Finally, she mumbled an excuse and walked off quickly. Charles looked at Lena, amazed. "You just left Jessica Blackwell speechless." "That's a first." She had it coming. Lena shrugged. "No one looks me up and down like that and walks away untouched." "You're amazing." He took her hand, intertwining their fingers. I know. She smiled, giving his hand a gentle squeeze. The evening continued with conversation, music, and a few curious glances. Charles didn't leave Lena's side for a second, and she looked more and more at ease, laughing, talking, even dancing with him in that slightly awkward way of his. Just before midnight, Charles led her up to the rooftop. The view of Manhattan was breathtaking. The city lights sparkled like fallen stars, and in the distance, the first fireworks were already going off. Thanks for coming, Charles said, looking at her. Thanks for insisting. Lena leaned on the railing, looking up at the sky. This is beautiful. Like, unreal. You're the one who's unreal, he said, stepping beside her. In the best way. You light up any place you're in. Lena turned to him, her eyes glowing. You're getting sentimental, Mr. Stone. Maybe, he said with a nervous smile. But it's true. The first fireworks burst across the sky, coloring the night with brilliant lights. Lena let out a soft gasp, and Charles couldn't hold back any longer. He gently held her face and kissed her. It was a soft kiss, hesitant at first, but quickly grew deeper. Lena responded, sliding her fingers into his hair, letting the world around them fade away. When they pulled apart, both were breathless. The fireworks kept exploding, but neither of them noticed. Happy New Year, Charles whispered, resting his forehead against hers. Happy New Year. And then a familiar voice cut through the moment. Well, isn't this touching? Lena stepped back quickly, turning around. Vanessa stood in the doorway wearing a deep red dress and a sharp smile. Vanessa, Charles's voice tightened. What are you doing here? Just came to congratulate the happy couple, she said, slowly walking toward them. Although I do wonder, Lena, do you really have feelings for him, or are you just enjoying the opportunity? What are you talking about? Lena crossed her arms, defensive. Oh, honey, don't play dumb. Vanessa tilted her head. You know exactly what I mean. A simple girl with no money, no future, suddenly catching the eye of one of the richest men in the city. Seems a little convenient, doesn't it? Vanessa, that's enough, Charles said, stepping forward. No. Let her talk. Lena raised her hand, stopping him. She looked straight at Vanessa. You think I'm with him for his money? Isn't it a little suspicious? You show up out of nowhere, play the helpless role, earn his sympathy. Lena's chest tightened not because of what Vanessa said, but because Charles said nothing. She had expected him to defend her right away, to say something, anything, but he just stood there, processing Vanessa's words, and that silence was enough. You know what? Lena grabbed her purse. I don't have to prove anything to you or to anyone. Lena. Wait. Charles reached for her arm. No. She pulled away, eyes shining with unshed tears. You hesitated. For a second. You believed her. That's not true. Yes, it is. I saw it in your face. Lena shook her head, disappointed. Thank you for tonight, Charles. It was eye-opening. She walked past Vanessa without looking back and entered the ballroom. Charles stood there stunned, feeling like his world had just crumbled. Vanessa smiled, pleased. They're always so dramatic, these girls. Charles stared at her, his voice cold. Get out of my way, Charles. Get out. Vanessa stepped back, startled by his outburst. He rushed past her, running after Lena. But when he reached the ballroom, she was already gone, lost in the crowd. Fireworks continued to light the sky outside. The party kept going strong, but for Charles Stone, the new year had begun with the bitter taste of something lost. Again. 3 days, 72 hours since New Year's Eve. Charles had called 12 times, sent messages, stopped by her house twice, but Lena never opened the door. He knew she was inside. He saw the lights on, heard soft music playing, but she just wouldn't answer. He couldn't blame her. In that moment on the rooftop, when Vanessa made her accusations, he had hesitated just for a second, but it was enough for Lena to see doubt in his eyes. And now he was paying the price. Lena, on her end, buried herself in work. She accepted every pastry order she could, cleaned 3 extra houses, ran errands for elderly neighbors, anything to stay busy. Because the moment she stopped, everything came rushing back. The kiss, the warmth, the feeling of finally belonging somewhere, and then Vanessa's voice tearing it all apart. She wasn't angry at Charles. She was angry at herself for believing, even for a moment, that it could actually work. The next morning, Lena was in the kitchen baking a batch of brownies when her neighbor Dorothy knocked on the door. "Lena, sweetie, are you going to the community party this afternoon, the neighborhood's delayed New Year celebration? There'll be food, music, games for the kids." Dorothy smiled brightly. "You should come. It'll be good for you to get out of the house for a bit." Lena thought about saying no, but something in Dorothy's persistence made her agree. "All right, I'll stop by." "Great, and bring those brownies. Everyone loves your baking." A few hours later, Lena arrived at the neighborhood square carrying a box of brownies. Music was playing, children were running around, and there were tables full of food and simple decorations that made the atmosphere feel warm and welcoming. She greeted a few familiar faces, dropped the brownies off at the dessert table, and started to relax. Maybe Dorothy was right. Maybe this was exactly what she needed. Then she saw him. Charles Stone was on the other side of the square, wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt, nothing like his usual flawless suits. He was washing dishes, literally, at a makeshift kitchen stand, next to two older women. He was scrubbing pots with a sponge, arms wet up to the elbows. Lena froze. What was he doing here? "Oh, you noticed the new guy," Dorothy said, appearing beside her. "He showed up early, offered to help with everything already washed, dishes, set up tables, even played with the kids. Such a kind man." Lena couldn't take her eyes off him. Charles laughed at something one of the women said, then reached for another pot to wash. Nothing about him looked forced. He seemed genuinely at ease. A child tugged on his t-shirt, asking for help with a kite stuck in a tree. Charles dropped everything, went to the tree, and after some effort and laughter from the kids, managed to get the toy down. The boy hugged him, thanking him. Charles ruffled the boy's hair, smiling. Something inside Lena began to melt. "You know him?" Dorothy asked, noticing her gaze. "Sort of," Lena murmured, still watching. "Then go talk to him. He looks like he could use some company." Lena hesitated. Part of her wanted to turn and leave, but the other part, the stubborn part that never gave up, pushed her forward. She walked up to the kitchen stand. Charles was drying his hands with a towel when he saw her. His face lit up. "Lena." "Charles." She crossed her arms, trying to stay composed. "What are you doing here?" "Washing dishes." "Apparently," he said with a small smile, and failing miserably at rescuing kites from trees. "I saw that." She couldn't help a slight smile. "You almost fell." "Almost. But the kid's dignity was on the line." He shrugged. "It was worth it." Lena looked around, trying to process it all. "Seriously, why are you here?" "Because you won't answer my calls. You won't open the door, and I needed to show you that." He let out a breath. "That I'm not playing around. Not with you." "So you decided to show up at the neighborhood party and wash dishes?" "I decided to show up and do whatever it takes to prove I care." He stepped closer. "And if that means washing dishes, playing with kids, or anything else, I'll do it." Lena felt her chest tighten. "Charles, I know I hesitated that night, and I hate myself for it." His voice was low and honest. "But it wasn't because I believed Vanessa. It was because I was afraid you really might be there for some other reason, not because I don't trust you, but because I don't trust myself to be worthy of this." She blinked, surprised. "What?" "Lena, I've spent my whole life surrounded by people who want something from me, money, connections, status. And when you came along, just being you, being real, I couldn't believe it. It felt too good to be true." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "So when Vanessa said those things, for a moment I thought, what if it's true? What if I'm fooling myself? And now?" Lena asked, her voice shaky. "Now I know I was wrong. You're not like the others. You're one of a kind. And I almost lost you because of my own doubts." Lena stood in silence, taking in his words. She could see the truth in his eyes, the vulnerability, the fear. "You're an idiot," she said at last. Charles blinked. "I know. A complicated, insecure idiot who freezes at the worst moment. I know that too." But she stepped closer. "But you're here washing dishes, playing with kids, doing something ridiculous to show me you mean it." "I am." He smiled softly. "And if I have to, I'll keep going. I can wash dishes for a whole month." Lena laughed, shaking her head. "No need to exaggerate." "So, Do you forgive me?" She paused. Her pride was telling her to stay distant, but her stubborn heart was whispering something else. "I'm still mad," she said honestly, "but I'm trying to understand. That's all I ask." Charles reached out his hand. "Can I take you home later so we can really talk?" Lena looked at his hand, then up at his face. Slowly, she took it. "All right, but you're finishing those dishes first." He laughed, relieved. "Deal." They stayed for another hour helping out with the party. Charles kept washing dishes. Lena served brownies, and little by little the mood between them began to warm up again. As the party wound down and they walked to the car, Charles's phone rang. He looked at the screen and frowned. "Sorry, it's the office. I need to take this." "Go ahead." He stepped a few paces away to answer. "Hello, Gregory." His partner's voice was tense. "Charles, we've got a problem. A big one." "What happened?" "The merger with Archite. It's falling apart. And there's more. We found out who leaked the information. It was someone inside. Now they're threatening to sue us for breach of contract." Charles felt his stomach twist. "What? Who leaked it?" "We're still investigating. But if this blows up, the company could collapse. You need to come back now." He closed his eyes, feeling the pressure return. "I'm on my way." He hung up and turned to Lena, who was watching him with concern. "Everything okay?" she asked. "No," he sighed, frustrated. "There's a crisis at the company. I have to take care of it before it turns into a disaster." "Go." Lena gently touched his arm. "We'll talk later." Charles hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you for today. For giving me a chance." "You're welcome. Now go save your empire." He gave a sad smile and got in the car. As he drove back to Manhattan, one thought kept running through his mind. He couldn't afford to lose everything now, not the company, not Lena. But for the first time, he wasn't sure if he could save both. The conference room was in a state of controlled chaos, papers scattered across the table, charts projected on the wall, and at least 6 executives speaking at once. Charles Stone entered with Gregory beside him, and the room fell silent. "Can someone explain to me calmly what happened?" Charles asked, taking a seat at the head of the table. Gregory opened a folder. "Someone leaked confidential details about our expansion plans to Archite. They're claiming we violated exclusivity clauses. Now they're threatening to sue us and call off the merger. Who leaked it?" Charles's voice was steady, but the tension in the room was palpable. "We're still investigating, but we suspect someone internal." William Stone, who had been sitting silently in the corner, finally spoke. "This is what happens when you let yourself get distracted, Charles. When you put feelings above business." Charles took a deep breath, holding back the response he wanted to give. "This isn't about distractions. It's about someone betraying the company. And where were you when this happened?" "Washing dishes at a neighborhood party." William raised an eyebrow. The room went even quieter. Charles stared at his father, feeling that old anger rise. But this time, something had changed. He didn't feel small. He didn't feel inferior. "I was learning something you never taught me," Charles stood. "That people matter. That life is more than profits and mergers. And that if this company can only survive by crushing the people around it, maybe it's not worth saving." William narrowed his eyes. "Careful what you say." "No, I'm done being careful." Charles walked around the table, looking each executive in the eye. This company was built on hard work, yes, but also fear. Fear of making mistakes, of being human, of caring. And I'm done with that. Gregory watched him, clearly impressed. "Charles, what are you saying?" "I'm saying we'll fix this crisis, but on my terms." He looked at his father. "And if you don't agree, take back control. I'm not living in the shadow of your expectations anymore." William stayed silent, studying his son. For the first time in years, he saw something different: determination, conviction. "Do it your way," William finally said. "But if you fail, it's on you." "I know." Charles sat back down. "Now, let's get to work." In the hours that followed, Charles reviewed contracts, spoke with lawyers, and searched for a solution. But the more he dug, the more he realized he needed a different perspective, someone who thought outside the box. Someone like Lena. He picked up his phone and hesitated. Would it be fair to involve her in all this? But before he could decide, The conference room door opened and Lena walked in. She was wearing jeans, a simple blouse, and carried a paper bag. Every executive in the room looked at her, confused. "Sorry to interrupt this big deal meeting," she said, glancing around. "But I heard you're in a crisis. And I brought cake because no one thinks straight when they're hungry." Charles couldn't help but smile. "Lena, what are you doing here?" "Helen called me, said you were about to explode from stress." She set the bag on the table. "So I came to help if you'll let me." "Of course. Help." Gregory frowned. "No offense, but this is a corporate crisis. I'm not sure how." "You let her speak," Charles interrupted. "Go ahead, Lena. What do you think?" She took a deep breath and looked at the charts on the wall. "Okay, I don't understand half of these fancy words you all use, but from what Helen told me, this is a trust problem, right? Someone leaked information, and now the other company doesn't trust you anymore." "Basically, yes," Gregory confirmed. "Then the issue isn't money, it's reputation." Lena crossed her arms. "Have you tried being honest?" One of the executives gave a dry laugh. "Honest? That's not how business works." "Maybe it should be," Lena replied, unfazed. "Look, if someone betrays me, I don't trust them again unless they show me they've changed. So why don't you do that? Show exactly what happened, who was responsible, and what you're doing to fix it. Total transparency." The room went silent. Charles looked at Gregory, who seemed to be thinking it over. "That's risky," Gregory said slowly. "But interesting." "It's human," Charles added. "And it might work." Lena shrugged. "Or it might not, but at least you tried something different. And you'll show people you're not like those cold-hearted businessmen everyone hates." Charles stood and walked over to her. "You're brilliant." "I know." She smiled. "Now sit down and get to work. I'm handing out cake to these grumpy folks." Over the next few hours, Charles and the team worked on the new strategy. Lena stayed nearby, helping where she could, making coffee, offering simple thoughts that somehow made perfect sense. By nightfall, most of the executives had left. Only Charles, Gregory, and Lena remained in the room. "I think we have a solid plan," Gregory said, gathering the papers. "I'll leave you too. Good work today, Lena." "Thank you, Gregory." She gave him a tired wave. Once they were alone, Charles sat beside her. "Thanks for coming. I wasn't going to let you go down alone." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Even if you're a jerk sometimes." He laughed and wrapped an arm around her. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not." She lifted her face to look into his eyes. "But you're trying, and that counts." Charles gently cupped her face and kissed her. It was a soft kiss, full of promise and relief. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I want this. I want you. No matter what my father says or what Vanessa tries to do." "I want it too," Lena said, smiling. "But you're going to have to put up with my cake every week." "Non-negotiable." "Deal." They stayed there for a while, enjoying each other's presence in comfortable silence, until Charles's phone rang. It was Helen. He answered and heard the nervous tone in her voice. "Mr. Stone, sorry to bother you, but we found something in the email records about the leak." "What?" Charles sat up straight. "It was Vanessa. She manipulated contracts and leaked information to Archite. We have proof." Charles felt his blood run cold. "Are you sure?" "Positive. The emails are all here with timestamps and recipients. She did it deliberately." He hung up, trying to process it. Lena watched him, concerned. "What is it?" "Vanessa." His voice was calm but full of anger. "She sabotaged the merger on purpose." Lena's eyes widened. "Why?" "Because she wanted to ruin me." Charles stood, running a hand through his hair. "And she almost did. What are you going to do?" He looked at her, determination returning to his eyes. "I'm going to confront her and make sure she pays for what she did." Lena stood too, taking his hand. "Then, let's go together." "You don't have to." "I know I don't, but I want to." She squeezed his hand. "You stood by me. Now it's my turn." Charles smiled, grateful. "Thank you." "You're welcome. Now let's take her down." They left the room side by side, ready to face the storm ahead. Because this time, Charles wasn't alone, and Vanessa Cole had no idea who she was dealing with. The next morning, Charles and Gregory were in the conference room reviewing the evidence, emails, call logs, altered documents. Everything pointed to Vanessa. She had been meticulous, but not meticulous enough. She's going to deny everything, Gregory said darkly. You know her. She'll claim it was a misunderstanding or that someone used her computer. That's why we need a public confession in front of witnesses. No room for manipulation. The door opened and Lena walked in carrying a paper bag and a confident smile. Good morning, gentlemen. I brought coffee and a brilliant plan. Gregory raised an eyebrow. Plan? That's right. She set the bag on the table and sat down. You've got an important meeting today, right? With the Archite executives. Yes, at 11, Charles confirmed. Why? Because it's the perfect opportunity. Lena crossed her arms, eyes shining. Is Vanessa going to be there? Probably. She's one of the directors. Perfect. Then all we need to do is lay out the evidence in front of everyone, big screen, projector, the whole spy movie setup. Gregory shook his head. That's risky. If something goes wrong, nothing's going to go wrong. Lena stood, full of confidence. But it has to be done right. And I've got an even better idea. Charles looked at her, curious. What idea? I'll walk into the meeting pretending to be an outside consultant. I'll present the findings of a surprise audit. She smiled. No one questions a consultant. And when I show the evidence, Vanessa won't have a way out. You want to walk into a high-level corporate meeting and fake your way in? Gregory looked at her like he couldn't believe it. Exactly. Lena gave him a wink. Trust me. I watch a lot of movies. Charles couldn't help but laugh. This is insane. Insane, but brilliant. She pointed at him. Do you trust me? He looked into her eyes and nodded. I do. Then let's make history. At 11 o'clock, the meeting room was full, Archite executives, board members, William Stone sitting tall in one of the chairs, and Vanessa, elegant as ever, wearing a carefully calculated smile. Charles opened the meeting, going over the steps being taken to rebuild trust. In the middle of the presentation, the door opened. Lena walked in wearing a gray suit she borrowed from Helen, fake reading glasses, and a folder under her arm. Her hair was pinned up in a neat bun, and she carried herself with authority. Sorry to interrupt, she said, her voice steady and professional. I'm Laura Mitchell from the external auditing firm hired by Stone Enterprises. We need to share some urgent findings. Everyone looked at her, puzzled. Vanessa frowned but didn't speak. Charles covered a smile. Of course, Miss Mitchell. Please go ahead. Lena walked to the projector, connected the laptop, and brought the documents up on the screen. During our routine audit, we found irregularities in the internal communication records, specifically emails sent to competitors containing confidential information. A wave of murmurs spread across the room. William leaned forward, interested. These are serious accusations, one of the Archite executives said. They're documented facts. Lena hit a key, and the first email appeared on the screen. The sender, Vanessa, the recipient, an Archite executive. The content, full details of the merger strategy. Vanessa went pale. This is ridiculous. That email must be fake. There's more. Lena continued, showing email after email, each one with timestamps, dates, and verified metadata. On top of that, we found records of calls made from your company phone to the same contacts, 17 calls in 3 weeks. Vanessa stood, furious. Who do you think you are? Someone who doesn't like liars. Lena took off the fake glasses and looked directly at her. And you're a first-class liar. How dare you? Sit down, Vanessa. William's voice cut through the air like a blade. He was staring at the screen, his expression dark. Do you have anything to say for yourself? Vanessa opened and closed her mouth, trying to find words. But there was no way out. The proof was undeniable. I did it because he didn't deserve this company, she said finally, pointing at Charles. He was distracted, immature, involved with the wrong people. I was protecting the Stone family legacy by sabotaging the company. Charles stood up, his voice calm but firm. You almost destroyed everything my father built. And for what? Revenge because you left me? You traded me for her. Vanessa exploded, pointing at Lena. First of all, I didn't trade anyone. You and I broke up over a year ago. Charles took a step closer. Second, Lena's worth more than you ever were because she's real, honest, kind, and she doesn't try to ruin people out of wounded pride. Lena crossed her arms, satisfied. Well said. William stood and walked toward Vanessa. You're fired effective immediately. And we will be pressing charges for corporate sabotage and breach of contract. You can't. I can. And I will. He signaled to security. Escort Miss Cole out of the building. Vanessa looked around, searching for someone to take her side, but found only cold stares. As security approached, she lifted her chin, trying to hold on to her dignity, and walked out under escort. The room went silent for a few seconds. Then one of the arcade executives started clapping. Others followed. Soon the whole room was applauding. William looked at Charles, and for the first time in years, there was something different in his eyes, respect. You handled that well, he said quietly. Thank you, Dad. Charles held out his hand. William shook it firmly. Then he looked at Lena. And you, fake auditor, nicely played. Lena smiled. Thank you, Mr. Stone. But I prefer the title, Company Saver. He almost smiled. Almost. The meeting ended with Arkite agreeing to resume negotiations. Once everyone left, Charles pulled Lena into a tight hug. You are amazing. I know, she laughed. But seriously, that suit is uncomfortable. How do you people wear that every day? He was about to answer when Lena's phone rang. She looked at the screen and frowned. It's an unknown number. Answer it. She picked up and put it on speaker. Hello, Miss Ortega. This is David Palmer, from Palmer Investments. I saw your name in the news recently connected to Stone Enterprises. We have a proposal for you. Lena looked at Charles, puzzled. What kind of proposal? We'd like to invest in your cafe. We did some research, spoke to people in your neighborhood, and we believe you have potential. We're prepared to offer full startup capital plus support to open the business within 3 months. Lena's heart started racing. Seriously? Absolutely. But we'll need a quick answer. We have other projects in line. She hung up, stunned. Charles held her hands. That's amazing, Lena. Your dream. I know. But... She hesitated. They only reached out because of the publicity, because of you. So what? What matters is that you'll get to open your cafe. But what about us? She looked into his eyes. I don't want you to think I'm using you to get this. I would never think that, he said, holding her face in his hands. You deserve this chance, and I'll be right here cheering you on. Always. Tears welled up in Lena's eyes. Are you sure? Completely. He kissed her forehead. Go make your dream come true. She hugged him tightly, her heart full because for the first time she had everything she ever wanted. And now she had to choose how to move forward. 1 year later, snow was gently falling over Brooklyn, covering the streets in a white blanket that made everything look like a postcard. It was Christmas Eve again. But this time, something had changed. On the corner of Maple Street, where there used to be an abandoned storefront, there now stood a cozy cafe. The front was simple, painted a soft yellow with large windows that let people see the warm, inviting space inside. A wooden sign hanging above the door read, in elegant letters, Sweet Home Cafe. Lena Ortega was inside adjusting the last chairs. She wore a red apron with her name stitched on it and a smile that lit up her whole face. After months of hard work renovations, recipe testing, and sleepless nights, she was finally ready to open. Dorothy and a few neighbors were already outside, eagerly waiting. Children had their faces pressed to the glass, trying to see the cakes displayed on the counter. Lena, it's time, Dorothy called, knocking on the window. Open up, before we break in. Lena laughed, wiped her hands on the apron, walked to the door, took a deep breath, and flipped the sign from closed to open. The door opened, and people poured in with excitement, hugs, congratulations, and happy comments about how beautiful everything looked. Rustic wooden tables, pendant lights hanging from the ceiling, plants in the windows, and the unmistakable smell of fresh coffee and cinnamon. Oh my gosh, Lena, this place is a dream, Dorothy said, looking around. Thank you. Lena beamed. Help yourselves. Today, everything's on the house. Guests spread out, sampling brigadeiros, cakes, pies, and the house special coffee. Laughter and conversation filled the room, creating exactly the kind of space Lena had always imagined, a place where people felt at home. She was behind the counter pouring cappuccinos when the door opened again, and this time her heart skipped a beat. Charles Stone walked in wearing a dark coat and holding a bouquet of flowers, white daisies, not crumpled this time. He paused at the entrance, looking around in awe. "Wow," he murmured. "He really did it." Lena stepped out from behind the counter and ran to him. "You came?" "Of course I did." He hugged her, spinning her gently. "I wouldn't miss the opening of the best cafe in New York. You haven't even tasted it yet." "I don't have to. I know the chef." He handed her the flowers. "Congratulations, Lena. You deserve all of this." She took the flowers, eyes glistening. "Thank you for everything. For believing in me even when I didn't believe in myself. You've always had talent. You just needed a chance." He looked around. "And look at what you've built." "We built it." She held his hand. "You gave me strength when I wanted to give up, helped with the suppliers, the accountant, with everything. It was the least I could do." He smiled. "Now, where's my coffee?" "Your first official customer is waiting." Lena laughed, pulling him toward the counter. "Sit right there. I'm going to make something special." While she prepared the coffee, Charles watched the place in motion. Dorothy walked over to him, smiling. "You're Charles, right?" "Her boyfriend." "I am." He reached out his hand. "Nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you too." "That girl doesn't stop talking about you." Dorothy gave him a knowing look. "I hope this is serious. She deserves something good." "It is very serious." Charles looked at Lena, who was focused on creating latte art. A few minutes later, she came back with a cup. On top of the foam, there was a heart drawn in the milk. "Your special coffee, Mr. Stone." He took the cup, took a sip, and closed his eyes. "Perfect, as always." "Liar. You put too much sugar. You're too sweet. It's impossible not to overdo it." He smiled. Lena rolled her eyes, but she was smiling too. "You're being sentimental today." "Maybe I am." He set the cup on the table and stood up. "Actually, there's a reason." "What reason?" Charles took a deep breath and looked around. Conversations started to quiet down. People began to notice something was about to happen. Dorothy nudged the neighbors, pointing discreetly. "Lena," Charles began, holding her hands. "A year ago, I was sitting alone in a fancy apartment, surrounded by everything and nothing at the same time. And you, barely knowing me, invited me to dinner. You offered me something no one else ever had, true companionship. No strings attached, no expectations, just kindness." Lena felt her heart race. "Charles, let me finish." He smiled, nervous. "Since that day, you turned my life upside down. You made me laugh when I'd forgotten how. You showed me the beauty in simple things. You taught me that a person's worth isn't in their bank account, but in their heart." He let go of one of her hands and slowly got down on one knee. The entire cafe went silent. Dorothy held her breath. Some people pulled out their phones to record. Charles took a small velvet box from his pocket and opened it, revealing a delicate ring with a single diamond. "Lena Ortega, will you spend the rest of your life making cake for me, teasing me, and reminding me that the world can be sweet? Will you marry me?" Lena covered her mouth with her hands, the tears finally falling. She looked at the ring, at Charles, at the people around them waiting anxiously. "You're proposing to me in the middle of my cafe on opening day?" "I am." He laughed, still on one knee. "I know it's not traditional, but you're not traditional, and I love that about you." She shook her head, laughing and crying at the same time. "You're impossible." "So is that a yes?" "Of course it's a yes, you fool." She pulled him up, wrapping her arms around his neck. The cafe erupted in applause and cheers. Charles cupped her face and kissed her long and deeply while everyone around them celebrated. When they finally pulled apart, he slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "I love you," he said softly. "I love you too." She looked at the ring, sparkling under the lights. "Even though you're stubborn, complicated, and a little lost sometimes, good to know you love me with all the flaws. Someone has to." She winked, teasing. Dorothy came over, emotional, and hugged them both. "I knew it. I knew from the start you two were meant for each other." Other people came to congratulate them, hugs, pictures. The mood was magical, light, full of love. Once things calmed down, Charles pulled Lena aside, away from the crowd. "Are you happy?" he asked seriously. "More than I ever thought possible." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "A year ago I was cleaning your penthouse, wondering if I'd ever have my own cafe. And now I have everything. The cafe, you, A future. We have a future. He kissed the top of her head. And it's going to be amazing. You'll have to deal with cake every week. I accept the terms. He smiled. And you'll have to deal with me showing up here every day for coffee. Deal. They stayed like that for a while, holding each other as the world kept turning. Outside, snow was falling gently. Inside, the smell of coffee and cinnamon filled the air, mixed with laughter and conversation. Dorothy raised a cup of coffee, getting everyone's attention. A toast to Sweet Home Cafe, to Lena, and to the kind of love that changes lives. Everyone raised their cups, coffee, juice, tea, and repeated in unison, "Cheers." Lena and Charles raised their glasses together, looking into each other's eyes. And in that moment, everything made sense. They didn't come from the same world. They didn't speak the same language of business or social conventions. But they had found something far more rare, a home in each other. Outside, the snow kept falling, covering the city in silence. But inside the Sweet Home Cafe, there was warmth, life, and the promise of many years ahead. Charles held Lena's hand, their fingers intertwined. "Merry Christmas, future Mrs. Stone." "Merry Christmas, future Mr. Ortega Stone." She smiled. "Because you're going to have to accept the hyphenated name. Whatever you want," he laughed. "As long as you stay exactly who you are, always." And under the warm eyes of friends, neighbors, and the future waiting ahead, they sealed the beginning of a new story, a story that started with a simple invitation on a lonely Christmas Eve and, now a year later, had grown into something much bigger, a true love built on honesty, respect, and the deep certainty that home isn't a place. It's being beside the one who makes the silence disappear.